Next, we'll have to look at each of the individual parts, make sure they work, repair if necessary, clean them up, and prepare for the third chapter, reassembly. If we just want to pick a place to start, I think the tuners are as good as any. The only real thing we can remove on those are like the posts and the gears, but that already helps us. So let's go ahead and do that. And for these, I like to keep the same order. Not sure if it's really necessary, but just in case like this gear has worn into the warm gear in a specific way that matches them together, I just want to make sure I reassembled it in the same configuration. Unfortunately, we can't take this any further apart because I don't want to break the riveting here, because there's no real chance of getting it back together in a simple way. I can still do a lot of cleaning like this. I will put some protective tape just on the shiny parts. And now that it's all protected, we can come in and just try and hit the rusty warm gear with a soft wire brush that has brass wire. And this usually removes the rust in a nice clean way. And just hitting it for a couple of seconds, you can already tell the difference. It really gets in there and cleans up the dirt in comparison to like the other ones. I should be able to do the shafts as well. Let's see. Yeah, it does something. I mean, the point here is not to make those look factory new. It is an old guitar, and I want to keep the signs of use. I just want to make it like as playable as possible. And to get it playable, I don't want the machines to rust away under my fingers. I want there to be like a clean surface if possible. Put some fresh oil on there and reassemble it. But like even removing this amount of surface rust should make it much better. If you look at the back, I think it's worth doing it. So yeah, let's get brushing. Now there's a bit of a thunderstorm going on outside. This same technique should work well for the tiny little screws as well. That's really thundering away, wow. Sorry about that. So let's put it in a vise here. I need both hands. There it is in the vise. So let's hit it a few times. Much better. I mean, if you compare it to what they looked like before, it's the tiny details. The posts themselves look pretty good. No real rust on there. But if you check out the holes up there, they have super sharp corners, and this is a point where string breakage usually occurs. I think I will go in there and chamfer the corners a little bit to make sure I don't break the first set of strings I put on there. The little chamfering bit here, and just doing it by hand. That's all we need. Oh, this works pretty well. Okay, now this looks pretty great. As good as new. Not really, but quite. Okay, so how would you polish these studs? There's a simple trick. Just chuck it in a drill. And here's the before and after. Just a couple of seconds. It looks amazing. Before we go to reassembly, we want to apply a very small drop of oil to the parts where it really counts. I'll use a little toothpick here to pick up some of the oil. And I don't want much. I just want some drops, but I want them there where it really matters. That's going to be in between here, in between the shaft and the little bearing. So I'll get a few drops on there and they will just creep in by themselves. As well as in between here. And this is even more important than on the worm gear itself. To get the oil in there. After we've applied a little bit, we'll just run it around a few times to spread it out. This already one is much nicer. Next, it's some oil on the bottom surface of the little gear, because this just rides on there and rubs on there. So a tiny bit of oil on there won't hurt. This just goes here. And for the actual shaft, the shaft has this little smaller diameter milled here. And this will get some oil because it rides inside the actual bore in the steel plate. There will be a lot of friction on there. And a bit of extra oil on here is just corrosion protection. It won't hurt as well, even if we get a drop in the thread. So just means the screw won't bind up over the next decades. Don't drop it. So this will go on from below, like so. Put a screw in there. Okay, yeah, it should be fine. Let's do the others. So this is what we achieved, and here's the before. And now I'll get to do it all over again a second time. Oh well. And here's the second one. I used the same method to shine up all the other metal parts. I will spare you that, but there's some more screws to go, and then the metal parts will be done. Another problem is I'm still missing some screws. As you've seen, I only have like 3 of the original pickup screws, and I damaged one on the tailpiece, but those are like the same size and type, so I decided I will just use 4 for one pickup, and I hope I can find some more for tailpiece in the other pickup. Or maybe I might use a different type but still flathead screw. I don't know, but at least I want it consistent, so I don't want to have like mixed screws on one piece. Yeah, perfect opportunity to have a look at my collection of old fasteners and screws. And I will dig through these boxes and fingers crossed I can find something useful. Steel ended up to be a bit of a problem, but I found a few more brass ones that are pretty much identical in size. Yeah, let's go brass. I think this should be fine. I just ran into another problem with the pickups here. I wanted to take those apart, and if you look closely at the mounting hardware here, this screw goes into like a threaded insert that is pretty much heat melted or heat set into the plastic here. And this is fine, but if you look on the other side, it's one solid piece of rust. And indeed, the screw doesn't turn, no way. If I force it, I will just break out the insert out of the plastic. And the same thing, exactly the same thing is true for the other pickup, where I have one screw that's moving and the other one is just rusted into place. This guitar was probably stored in a damp place for a good while. Ah no, this looks terrible. The threads are completely gone. The other one was rusted pretty bad as well, but it came out without a fight. And the question remains, do I even need to pull them out? And unfortunately, I think the answer is yes, because at first I might have to pull the cover to resolder the cable here. And to do that, I have to get it out of the frame. And the second reason would be if I just install it like this again, the next person will come in here probably trying to adjust the pickup height, yank the screwdriver and break the plastic, and yeah, I think it's bad practice to reinstall this non-working height adjust in a guitar. That's probably a good time to check if there's any life in the pickup at all before we proceed any further. We might have to even rewind it. I don't know. Let's hope it works. And we have a working pickup. While we're at it, here's the neck pickup. Notice it has like a purple wire instead of a red one, so we can differentiate it. Also has the crack here and the rusted out screw. And look what we have. 5.8K. 2 working pickups. Good news, it worked. So, it looks a little bit rough. Maybe the new hole isn't perfectly center, but I suspect it's going to be fine. And we now have 2 of those, one for each pickup. We should be able to heat melt them back in, or even, I guess, even glue them back in, add some super glue just for safety. And I also found some new screws to replace the ones we had to cut the heads off. Like that. And now onto the body. It seems to be in very good shape actually. Even sounds pretty good. Quite loud and resonant. But before I can get to polishing and basically being done with it, there's a couple of things I need to fix. First of all, and we already talked about this little thing here, which I need to glue back down. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. But I found a crack in the main block. Look at this one here. There's a pretty big crack running all around here. It's not super deep, but it definitely needs fixing. Quite impossible to do it and film at the same time, but I injected a good amount of glue in there with a little bit diluted down with water using a syringe. And now the clamps are on, we have good squeeze out. And we can get rid of that squeeze out to make it look a little bit prettier. Some glue in there as well. And now I clamp it down using just a piece of wood with a bit of parchment paper underneath. I wanted to work on the bridge next, but I noticed something unusual. First of all, I'm sure this is the correct one, as I've seen many pictures with this style of bridge, so I assume this is the right one. But if we compare it to the radius of the fingerboard, which is pretty flat, this thing has a much smaller radius. Means it's much rounder. I mean, if there would be a discrepancy, you would expect the opposite, to be the bridge to be a little bit flatter, but this is kind of unusual. I might have to end up reshaping this. Yeah, but that's the thing with guitars like this. You can never be sure they played great from the factory, because they probably didn't. This is the old original saddle from the bridge, which has a too small of a radius on top. And the line I marked on here will be the new radius to match the fingerboard. And I decided to sand this down and file for new slots, because those old ones are pretty terrible anyways. The bridge base fits pretty terribly. There's lots of light underneath there, so we'll have to sand this. The cross-grain sanding marks really show the high spots, and I removed those off of the guitar with some external scraping sandpaper. And try again. Yeah, it's an incremental process. Takes a while. We do have the problem of lifting thread ends, so we have to do something about that before leveling. Listen, you can even hear when something's wrong. Seated. Loose. Every thread end got a little drop of super glue, and now we can play the thread dressing game. Marking them, leveling them, crowning them, and polishing them. There's pretty much just two problematic areas. That's one or two very low threads in the back here, and then some deep play wear in the second thread. You can see those divots there. So I'll have to take a little bit more off. The threads are leveled. I'm just doing a final check with the thread rocker. And after that we can go to crowning and doing the ends. Dressing some fall away here into the highest threads, so we don't get what they call kick up in the end, or like the ski jump or whatever. Crowning each thread until just a nice line of marker remains in the center. Filed thread ends and everything nicely taped up for polishing. Now that turned out pretty good. Really nice grain on that fingerboard. Alright, let's make a pickguard. We do have the original 3 mounting holes, but we don't have a template. If we look online, we can find some tracings and pictures of this, but whatever I try, I never found one that's really perfectly to scale. They all won't really fit. So I ended up just putting a piece of paper on the body, feeling for the holes, so I got the dimensions. And then based on some online printout that's not really perfectly to scale, I came up with this. And a little mock-up as a sanity check. And I think that's the shape. a little bit of a weird design, but I think I'll go with the original, so yeah, let's make this out of plastic. And here's the result. This is the painted back of the pickguard, and this is the front. Yes, I purposefully used an old scratched up piece of plastic. Might look a little bit extreme in the raking light here, but trust me, this will fit right in with the other worn parts. See what I mean? A perfectly shiny new one would have stood out like a sore thumb. And this will be just right. And that's it. Every part we need to assemble an hopefully nice and working guitar. Cleaned, in some cases repaired or even made from scratch. Nice new frets, at least shiny frets, shiny old frets. Next time we'll do the fun part of putting it together. See you then. Bye.